Myriam loved the vibrant tapestry of Karachi. The city, a kaleidoscope of color and chaos, was her playground. She'd navigate its bustling bazaars, the air thick with the aroma of spices and jasmine. Laughter followed her as she raced through the narrow, winding streets, her laughter echoing off the ancient stone walls. Evenings were spent on the rooftop, a cool breeze rustling through her hair as she gazed at the city lights twinkling below. Life was a blend of sweet and savory, much like the chai her grandmother brewed every morning. She attended a small school, a hidden gem tucked away in one of Karachi's oldest neighborhoods. Her days were filled with the giggles of friends, the scratch of pencils on paper, and the comforting rhythm of Urdu poetry. Myriam's world was a vibrant mix of cultures and traditions. She celebrated Eid with her Muslim neighbors, sharing sweetmeats and stories. Myriam was Jewish, one of the few remaining Jews in a land where her ancestors had lived for centuries. Myriam's family observed their faith quietly. They lit candles on Friday nights, their small apartment glowing with the warmth of Shabbat. Her grandmother, her voice a soothing melody, would recount tales from the Torah, stories of prophets and journeys, of exile and resilience. They were stories that resonated deeply within Myriam. Myriam often found herself tracing the outline of the Star of David, a silent symbol of her faith, etched on an old, worn-out locket. But outside the comforting walls of her home, Myriam learned to keep her identity hidden. The world, she soon realized, could be a confusing and sometimes unforgiving place. At school, Myriam listened intently during history lessons. She heard stories of ancient civilizations, of empires that rose and fell, of cultures that blended and clashed, yet there was a silence, a void, when it came to the history of her people in this land. Where did her people fit into the grand narrative of Pakistan? What stories lay buried beneath the layers of time, waiting to be unearthed? But the answers, like fragments of a forgotten dream, remained elusive. As Myriam grew older, she became increasingly aware of the delicate tightrope she walked. Myriam's grandmother, Myriam, a woman whose wrinkles held the wisdom of 1,000 stories, would often gather Myriam and her cousins around her. Perched on cushions, their eyes wide with anticipation, they would listen as she transported them to a time long ago, a time before Pakistan, before India, to a land known as Hindustan. Our people, she'd say, her voice a low whisper that commanded their attention, have walked these lands for centuries. She spoke of ancient trade routes, of spices and silks, of Jewish merchants who sailed across the Arabian Sea, carrying with them stories and traditions from distant lands. They settled along the coasts of India, their communities weaving themselves into the rich tapestry of the subcontinent. Myriam recounted tales of Jewish communities thriving in Delhi, in Mumbai, in Kolkata. Among the many Jewish communities that called India home, one held a special place in Myriam's heart, the Bani Israelis. Legend had it that their ancestors, shipwrecked on the Konkan coast centuries ago, had managed to preserve their Jewish identity against all odds. Imagine, Myriam would say, her eyes twinkling, being washed ashore on a foreign land, the vast ocean separating you from everything familiar. Yet they clung to their faith, passing it down through generations, a flickering flame in the face of adversity. The Bani Israelis, skilled agriculturalists and artisans, integrated into Indian society while maintaining their unique customs and traditions. Myriam spoke of their distinct language, Marathi, infused with Hebrew words, a testament to their dual heritage. As the centuries passed, new waves of Jews arrived on the shores of India. From Baghdad and Persia, from Europe and Central Asia, they came seeking refuge, opportunity, and adventure. Each wave brought with them their own stories, their own traditions, enriching the already diverse Jewish community. Some, like the Baghdadi Jews, brought with them a legacy of trade and commerce. They established themselves as prominent merchants, their businesses spanning vast distances, connecting India to the world. Others, like the Cochin Jews of Kerala, brought with them a rich tradition of scholarship and artistry. But history, like the shifting sands of time, is rarely kind. The winds of change, Myriam explained, often carried with them both promise and peril. And so it was that the winds of change swept across India, bringing with them an era of both unity and division. As the fight for independence from British rule gained momentum, a sense of shared destiny united people from all walks of life. Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, and Christians all marched together, their voices echoing the dream of a free and independent India. Amongst these freedom fighters stood many Jews, their hearts filled with the same yearning for a brighter future. The year 1947 arrived, heavy with anticipation and trepidation. The dream of a free India was finally realized, but at a cost that would forever scar the subcontinent. The partition, a line drawn hastily on a map, cleaved India into two nations, India and Pakistan. What followed was a period of unimaginable chaos and bloodshed. Millions were displaced, their lives uprooted as they were forced to flee their homes, their journeys marked by violence and loss. The Jewish community, like all other communities in India, was caught in the maelstrom of partition. Families were torn apart, friends separated by borders that were once invisible. Many Jews, their hearts heavy with grief, made the difficult decision to leave the land they had called home for generations. Myriam's family, like many others, found themselves at a crossroads. The stories her grandmother had told of a vibrant Jewish community in India now seemed like echoes of a distant past. The partition had cast a long shadow, dimming the light of their shared history. The news from across the newly drawn borders was filled with tales of unrest and uncertainty. Synagogues, once bustling centers of religious and cultural life, were emptying out. Families were leaving, seeking safety and security in distant lands. The exodus had begun. It was a trickle at first, then a steady stream, as families made the heart-wrenching decision to leave behind the only home they had ever known. Pakistan, a nascent nation carved out of the Indian subcontinent, offered a complex and often contradictory reality for its Jewish citizens. On the one hand, the newly formed government, led by Muhammad Ali Jinnah, espoused a vision of a secular and inclusive state where people of all faiths could live together in harmony. Jinnah, in his inaugural address to the Constituent Assembly of Pakistan, famously declared, "You are free. You are free to go to your temples. You are free to go to your mosques or to any other place or worship in this state of Pakistan." These words, however idealistic, offered a glimmer of hope to the Jewish community. They were, after all, citizens of this new nation, bound by the same hopes and dreams as their Muslim compatriots. Yet beneath the veneer of tolerance, a different reality was taking shape. The Jewish community, a small and vulnerable minority, found themselves caught between two worlds, their loyalties questioned, their place in society increasingly uncertain. The years that followed were marked by a slow but steady decline in the Jewish population of Pakistan. The rise of religious intolerance, fueled by political opportunism and social divisions, created an environment of fear and uncertainty. Synagogues, once symbols of religious freedom, became targets of vandalism and arson. Jewish businesses were boycotted, their livelihoods threatened. The promise of a better life, of safety and security, drew many Jews to Israel. The Jewish community in Pakistan, once a vibrant thread in the nation's diverse tapestry, was shrinking, its colors fading, its stories at risk of being lost in the annals of history. Myriam felt the shift in the atmosphere as she grew older. The Magen Shalom synagogue, once a beacon of life in her neighborhood, felt increasingly hollow. The echoes of Hebrew prayers, once a comforting constant, grew fainter with each passing Sabbath. Fewer families filled the pews. Familiar faces etched with years of shared history were replaced by empty spaces, a silent testament to the exodus unfolding around her. The lively discussions that once followed services, a blend of Hebrew and Urdu, dwindled to hushed whispers. Myriam noticed the worry etched on the faces of the elders, their eyes reflecting the uncertainty of the times. At school, Myriam found herself navigating a different kind of silence. The whispers that had followed her in her younger years had transformed into a curious quiet. Classmates, once eager to question her about her faith, now seemed hesitant, their eyes betraying a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. The political climate in Pakistan had grown increasingly volatile. News reports were filled with stories of religious tensions, of minorities targeted, of a growing divide between communities. Myriam felt the invisible walls rise, separating her from her peers, her identity suddenly a barrier instead of a bridge. She found herself questioning her place in this changing landscape. The once thriving Jewish businesses, pillars of the community, began to disappear from Karachi's bustling streets. Shops that had served generations, their names synonymous with quality and tradition, closed their doors, one by one. The exodus was leaving its mark, not just on the Jewish community but on the city itself. The vibrant tapestry of Karachi, woven with threads of diverse cultures and traditions, was losing one of its most intricate strands. Myriam witnessed the slow unraveling of her community's legacy. She saw the sadness in her father's eyes as he spoke of his friends, fellow businessmen who had decided to seek their fortunes elsewhere. The silence was deafening, echoing through the empty synagogues, the deserted businesses, the hushed conversations within the walls of her home. Despite the challenges, Myriam refused to succumb to despair. Her grandmother Myriam taught her the importance of holding on to hope, even in the darkest of times. Our people, Myriam would say, have faced adversity throughout history. We have survived exile, persecution, and displacement. We carry the strength of our ancestors, the belief in a brighter tomorrow. Myriam found solace in her grandmother's stories of their ancestors. She drew strength from knowing she was part of a lineage marked by resilience and hope. Years passed and Myriam blossomed into a young woman. The vibrancy of Karachi pulsed around her. She carried a quiet understanding of the city's hidden stories. The Magan Shalom synagogue stood as a poignant symbol of a bygone era. Its doors remained open, a testament to the resilience of the few remaining Jews in Karachi. Myriam often found herself drawn back to its quiet sanctuary. She would close her eyes, and the space would come alive with memories. She could almost hear the murmur of Hebrew prayers and joyful melodies. Myriam realized that the story of her community, the Jews of Pakistan, was not just confined to the walls of a synagogue. It was woven into the fabric of the nation, etched in its streets, its buildings, its people. She saw it in the intricate carvings adorning the city's colonial-era buildings. She heard it in the melodies of traditional Pakistani music. Myriam made it her mission to seek out these echoes, these remnants of a shared history. Myriam knew that the exodus of her community had left a void, a gap in the tapestry of Pakistani society. Yet she also recognized the power of stories to bridge divides, to foster understanding and empathy. She began sharing her family's story, her community's journey, with anyone who would listen. She spoke at schools, at community centers, at places of worship. She shared her story not with anger or bitterness, but with a quiet dignity and a deep-seated belief in the power of dialogue. Her words resonated with audiences, sparking conversations about identity, belonging, and the importance of embracing diversity. She challenged stereotypes and misconceptions, replacing them with stories of shared humanity and interconnectedness. Myriam became a bridge between communities, her story a testament to the enduring power of hope and resilience. She understood that true progress lay not in erasing the past, but in learning from it, in using it as a foundation to build a more inclusive and compassionate future. As Myriam looked to the future, she refused to be defined by the dwindling numbers of her community. She saw the exodus not as an end, but as a new beginning. Jewish communities around the world were thriving, their traditions preserved. She drew inspiration from their resilience and ability to adapt. Myriam envisioned a future where their legacy would be celebrated with pride. The light of her community would continue to shine like 1,000 stars.